See how you score on a scale of 0 to 100. In this episode, we are going to address how to make sure you won't outlive your money. Get ready. I'm going to show you 10 principles that are critical to assure that you don't outlive your money in retirement. So my name's Doug Andrew, and I've actually been a financial strategist and a retirement planning specialist now for more than 48 years. And I've noticed that many people, as they approach retirement, oftentimes they've been working hard throughout their life and they are sort of in a tax trap because they've been following the herd. They've maybe had their head in the sand as far as really understanding some of the best ways to save. And so they get caught into this trap where people are told, oh, put money into the company's 401k or use IRAs because you'll get a tax break on the front end, but on the back end, when you go to retire, you'll likely be in a lower tax bracket then. Well, folks, that has not been true or axiomatic now for more than 30 years. Most people that I have met as they approach retirement are not in lower tax brackets if they saved very much of a respectable retirement nest egg. So in this episode, I'm going to show you some strategies that are critical that'll help you understand how to make sure you don't outlive your money in retirement, because there are three big dangers that cause most retirees to outlive their money, no matter how much of a retirement nest egg they have accumulated. Number one danger is rising taxes, and I think you can understand that taxes will not be going down in the future. Whenever I speak to audiences and I ask them, how many of you think that taxes in the future will likely be lower? I get nothing but crickets. How many think they're going to be the same? A few hands go up, but when I ask how many think they're going to be going up, they're going to be higher, a sea of hands goes up. And then I ask, so why are you continuing to defer into traditional IRAs and 401ks, procrastinate, paying tax to some future perceived unknown advantage and let it grow, and you know you're going to be in a higher tax bracket when you retire? That doesn't make sense. And people go, I've never taken time to really think about it. So taxes take their toll on your retirement savings, as I will illustrate. Number two is inflation, and oftentimes I refer to inflation as the hidden tax because it affects everybody and it hurts the lower income people the worst. And we are experiencing unprecedented inflation since the last 30 years, since the Carter years. And so even though the consumer price index says inflation is in the 5 or 6% range, because they changed the way they report inflation, or the CPI, they compare apples to oranges instead of apples to apples each year. They can compare filet mignon steak last year to hamburger this year if they want. The real rate of inflation is more like 14 or 15%. Meaning the cost of living will double about every 5 or 6 years. You'll have to have twice as much money to buy the same gallons of gas and loaves of bread. So inflation is the number two danger. Number three is market volatility, because we are going to see continued topsy-turvy ups and downs in the market because of fiscal and monetary policy that is going on right now with the current administration. So these are the three big dangers that cause most retirees to outlive their money. So I want you to understand, when I teach educational events, one of my favorite is called a Retire by Design, that my goal is to help people get super clear on where they're at right now with their money and other assets that they possess, their health and their values and their family and so forth, and then get clarity on where they're wanting to go. But this is sometimes a little bit esoteric. They don't know how to quantify that. So I'm going to show you how you can do this. But engage with me here for just a moment, because when you're about to go on a trip somewhere for the very first time, what's the most important piece of information you need to know? Now, most people blurt out where you're going or how to get there. Nope. When using a GPS, it uses triangulation. And it does that by honing in on 3 out of about 30 satellites that orbit this Earth for that very purpose. Once it has clarity on where you are at, within 2 square feet on this globe, then you program in where you're wanting to go, and it will show you all kinds of ways to get to your desired destination. The freeway, the scenic way, the byway, and also where to refuel your car or yourself en route. So when people ask me, Doug, what is it that you like to do? I enthusiastically respond, I like to be sort of like the OnStar button on people's dashboard of life. I like to help people get extremely clear on where they are at in every area of their life, and then get clarity on where they're wanting to go. Then the path to get to their desired destination can be easily mapped out, sort of how to live the life they want to lead. Now, a very good friend of mine, strategic coach Dan Sullivan, told me one day, all progress begins by telling the truth, and I would add, to yourself. Sometimes the hardest person to tell the truth to is yourself. As a financial strategist and retirement planning specialist now for north of 48 years, I can usually look at somebody's tax return or 6 numbers on a financial statement, and within 2 minutes, I can tell where they are at financially. How much of a fortune they're missing out on, what they know and what they obviously don't know, how long their money is going to last. The fact of the matter is you don't know what you don't know because you can't be aware of something you're not aware of. Now, you can also tell where somebody's at by where they're at physically. We make choices in our life regarding exercise or lack of exercise, nutrition or lack of nutrition, that puts us at a cellular level not at ease, what we call dis-ease, that all too often results in what my good friend Tony Escobar calls death by lethal ingestion, maybe because of weapons of mass consumption. But you can also tell where somebody's at by where they're at emotionally, intellectually, spiritually. But see, all progress begins by telling the truth. And once you have clarity on where you are at in every area of your life, and then get clarity on where you're wanting to go, the path to get to your desired destination can be easily mapped out. Does that make sense? So that's why I've been very passionate for years about getting people super clear, like a GPS, on where they're at, but it has to hone in on 3 satellites. And that's why we focus on 3 dimensions of authentic wealth. Hence, this YouTube channel is 3-dimensional wealth. Be sure and watch episodes that talk about what I mean by 3 dimensions. But let's go into this clarity now about where you're at and where you're wanting to go with regard to your money. So there's 3 big opportunities that I think everybody ought to consider at least 5 years before they retire, but it's never too late, even if you're already retired. Number 1 is to convert as much as possible, and I would recommend between 40 to 60% of your assets and your income in retirement not even show up on your 1040 tax return. The IRS will know you're receiving it, but they will know it is tax-free. It's been sort of grandfathered that way in the Internal Revenue Code for over 108 years. So that eliminates the dangers of taxes. Number 2 is link your returns to the things that inflate. I don't like inflation any more than you do, but it doesn't hurt me. It actually helps me because I've always earned a rate of return equal to or greater than the inflation rate at any given time. When inflation was at 10 back in the 80s, I was earning 15.5 or higher. So you want to outpace inflation, otherwise you'll be rowing upstream at the rate of 2 or 3 or 4 miles an hour when the current inflation is coming down at 10, 11, or 12. You're going backwards. And number 3, you want to use indexing, which is a strategy. Now, indexing, I'm not talking about index mutual funds. Indexing allows you to participate when the economy is doing well, when the market is up, but not lose 1 dime when the market goes down because your money is not at risk invested in the market. And this is called indexing, and I have YouTube episodes that will educate you on what that is. Those are the 3 greatest opportunities I think every retiree should seize. Now, the three greatest strengths of my favorite vehicle, and I'm going to gift you a copy of my most recent best-selling book called The Laser Fund. And so it's called Laser because of these features. Number one, liquidity. See, when you're retired, you want to be able to access your money when you need it with an electronic funds transfer phone call without having 10% penalties or being clobbered with tax. So liquidity is number one. Number two is safety. Safety of the institution, yes, but also safety of principle, meaning whatever I set aside, I don't want to lose due to market volatility. And any year that I make money, I want that to become newly protected principal, meaning I don't want to ever lose in future years money I've made in previous years. You wouldn't believe how many financial advisors don't know how to do that one. And number three is to earn predictable rates of return, not pie in the sky, but averaging 7 to 10% tax-free. Because a tax-free rate of return of 10% is equivalent to a 15 or 16% tax-deferred return where you have to pay tax on the 15 in a 33% bracket and you're only netting 10. I only need to earn 10 in a tax-free vehicle to net 10. Does that make sense? So those are the three greatest strengths. So this is why I developed this scorecard. Now, scorecards, it's like catnip to me. I don't know about you, but whenever I see anything in an article or a magazine that allows me to score myself, I have to take the quiz or the survey to see how I'm doing. So I would recommend you do this, and I'll show you where you can obtain a copy of this scorecard when we're through. But here on this scorecard, this is what I use when I teach live events, retire by design events for these people who are approaching retirement. And over here on the left of this scorecard are 10 key principles among about 100 that I teach, but these are the game-changing principles. And they are arranged based upon financial and then the other two dimensions of what I call authentic wealth. And we begin with liquidity, safety, rate of return, and tax advantages. That has directly to do with the financial dimension, your money. And then I go into cash generator, but this is spelled with a K. It means, it's an acronym, and it means knowledge, attitude, skills, and habits. I want to leave behind that to my kids and grandkids, that kind of cash instead of the CASH, because I want to be able to leave behind how to fish, so to speak, instead of dumping a bunch of fish in my kids and grandkids' laps. And then it's a generator approach instead of a battery. And then the difference between abundance versus scarcity mindsets, 3 dimensions, which is like a 3-legged stool, versus 1 dimension where people are just focused on money, 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 and they're bankrupt in the other 2. They're wobbling on 1 leg. Responsibility and accountability versus blaming or justifying or operating in shame. Equal opportunities instead of equal distribution, which ruins most of our children and grandchildren today with an entitlement mindset. And last of all is a values and vision document, which is like an ethical will, what you really believe in, what's inherent in here, instead of some legal instrument like a trust that your kids will never read except 1 page that says how much they get. They don't really know what you stood for if you don't capture that. So with all of these principles on this scorecard, they have different descriptions of where you might be at, okay? The red column is poor, okay? And then we move to fair, good, better, best. And so all progress begins by telling the truth. So when I do an event, I have people learn what liquidity really means, and then they read through and realize that their money in an IRA or 401k is not as liquid as they thought without incurring a 10% penalty or having to pay tax. There's disadvantages. And so once you understand it, you might give yourself a score of 5 or 6 over here on the right, like a 5 out of a possible 10, because this is a fraction over here on the right, and everybody wants to have a perfect score, right? And so what I do with my Retire by Design students is I have them go through as we teach these concepts. And this is a 6-hour course, and you can take it in snippets or you can do it all at once. But as you go through and you learn these, you will assign yourself a score on safety of principle. Where do you score on a scale of 1 to 10? Rate of return. Are your rate of returns more like 2 or 3 or 4%? Okay. How about tax advantages? Roths only score here, and traditional IRAs or 401ks are only a 3 or 4, and people are shocked when they learn that. No, I want to have totally tax-free. And so as you go through and you identify where you are at on a scale of 1 to 10, you add up those 10 numbers, and you will have a score between 0 and 100, which represents the percentage that you are there. You are a perfect score of 100 or at least 90 or higher. And my biggest payday really is when I see people who score maybe 30 or 40 on this scorecard, and I say, don't beat yourself up. Now you're clear on where you're at, but my goal is to help you get to 90 or higher in as short of time period as possible. In less than 5 years, I remember one couple in Morgan Hill, California, they came back in 9 months and their score went from 32 up to over 93 in 9 months, and I gave them a high five. So this is a scorecard that will help you understand where you are at on a scale of 1 to 100, and 100 is where I think you want to go. So this is why it's so critical to understand this. And so in this book I want to gift you called The Laser Fund, it's right here, it's a 300-page book. You can get a free copy of this if you haven't received one already and claimed yours. But on page 13 of the orange-covered side is this scorecard, okay? Now this is actually 2 books in one. This side is the left brain side. This has 200 pages with charts, graphs, and explanations and so forth. If you're more a left brain thinker, a logical thinker. Now if you're more of a right brain thinker, you learn by stories and examples. You flip it over to this side, and this has 12 chapters, about 100 pages with 62 chicken soup for the financial soul stories. And so on page 13 of this side, you'll see that scorecard. And also, if you come to one of our Retire by Design virtual events on our website, 3Dimensional Wealth, and when you claim your free copy, you'll have the opportunity to do that. So if this is intriguing you, this is just a taste of that 6 hours of education called Retire by Design. Get your free copy by going to laserfund.com or click on the link below. And if you want, I also have a book, Entitlement Abolition, and you can get them in a bundle. But there's also options there if you want to register for one of these Retire by Design educational events. So here is to your brighter future. You contribute a nominal amount towards the shipping and handling. I will gift you these books.